All right, folks, welcome back to Conversations with the Mind. I'm your host, Shane Lemaster, and we're here for episode 80. Very special guest, Ontorio Jackson. What's up, Ontorio?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me on. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you on. So I know you listen to the show, and the first question is always the same, so we'll get right into it. And that is, so the show's title is Conversations with the Mind, and I'm wondering, what does that phrase mean to you? How does it sort of manifest within your mind? What images come to your mind when you hear Conversations with the Mind?
Um, Mostly meditation, but I think of it as sort of like a mental audit. Just make sure that I'm good internally, or if there's something that I need to address.
Yeah, I like that idea of like a mental audit, sort of like constantly having at least some energy or a lens focused on the inside to like take an inventory daily of sort of what thoughts am I having, what emotions am I having, why am I having these, what is my, I like to have those internal dialogues, like what is my place in the world, what is my place in this movement going on right now, what is my place in the universe. So my conversations are kind of all over the place, but I really like that idea that you said of like having a mental audit.
Yeah, man. I tell you what, with everything that's been going on, I've been having to do a lot of like recentering. You know what I mean? Just getting up in the morning and angry or something for no reason at all, and I kind of got to figure that out and work through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so what do you do? What do you do to recenter yourself daily? Because I find myself doing that all the time, throughout the day now.
My greatest tool on that, or the one I use the most right now, is just two positives for every negative thought. Because the negative thoughts are going to come. So, I like to have two positives to offset it. And other times I just need to redirect my thoughts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I like that, that ratio 2 to 1. Um, Sometimes though, for me, that doesn't work, right? So like sometimes the negative thought is just so powerful or has so much emotion behind it that two positive thoughts just kind of seem like, just scratching the surface. So, sometimes I got to dig a
Mhm.
little bit deeper.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about something long enough, it can send you into a downward spiral, like we kind of touched on the social situation that's going on right now. And I haven't looked at the whole video, and I don't intend to, because it'll put me in the pit that I don't think I would ever be able to get out of, or it would at least take, months or years to get out of. So in those cases, I just have to redirect. I can't ignore it, but I'm not going to let the things that I can't do stop me from doing what I can.
Yeah. It's almost like that the emotion that comes with it sort of inhibits our ability to make effective action happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's
I mean,
get right into it. Let's get right into talking about, what's going on socially. And um, I think it's great that, you came on today. I mean, this is, we're recording this the weekend after the protests started. And so there's been a lot of political debate about it, a lot of media attention to these peaceful protests, and then a number of cities have had riots, all sorts of conspiracy theories. Whether I don't know if they're true or not out there about bricks being delivered to protest sites and police officers inciting riots and things like that. But it's a totally different experience for me being a white male in a white dominated culture. And I'm very grateful to have you on the show being a black man, and I'd love to hear your perspectives on what's going on. And I have seen the video, and it's ridiculous if you watch it. I mean, coming from any kind of jiu-jitsu background, you definitely,
hmm
I mean, you understand what's possible and know a lot more about the anatomy and blood chokes and you can sever somebody's spine with the knee on the neck like that. So from our perspective, it seems like common sense, but for a lot of people, not so much.
I know, right? And I feel like if those cops were trained in jujitsu, they would have known better, just from being choked themselves and being under a lot of pressure. They would know that this isn't necessary. Get off this guy, you know what I mean? But it's just speculation. It's just it's just a mess. It's a mess. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he was in Denver, and he said that he saw the pile of bricks. That's just crazy. How often do you see a pile of bricks, not even at a construction site? You see like just a pile of bricks. And there's this conspiracy that they want things to get out of control so they can implement some type of law where they can just start raiding people and arresting them without justification. It's crazy.
Yeah, in the last couple of days, I've been seeing some things that have been really, really upset. I mean, obviously, it's all upsetting, but the fallout the response from the government. I think I heard something about some talks about implementing some martial law and getting troops involved and things like that. And in my mind, like that's exactly what an authoritarian government wants. They want that sort of control, because then once they have that control, they very rarely give that back up or give you back your freedoms, because they have to maintain the control. That's how all these terrible societies of the past have come under that kind of dictatorship. And so the response from the government seems, well, from the federal government anyway, seems a little harsh. I'm glad that troops are sort of standing up and refusing those kind of orders. But still, this is all, whether it's a conspiracy and it's done on purpose or not, there are entities that are using this to initiate, control mechanisms on the people.
For sure. And it's super scary, especially, having kids coming up in this world. It's like, man, I want to do something about it. I don't want to just throw them out there. There you go, sink or swim.
Sure. How many kids you got?
Well, I say I have two biological, a son and a daughter, and a 21-year-old. I've been in this life since he was 2, so I consider mine too.
Nice. Yeah. So it must be like, what sort of talks have you been having with them about what's going on? I'm sure this kind of stuff is ruffling their feathers as well, as it should.
Man, it is so scary. It's, my 20-year-old, 21-year-old, he seems to be pretty good. He just graduated from college, and my son, the 18-year-old, he's graduating from high school. I'm actually flying down to Texas this weekend to see him, and it's scary how he doesn't really know what's going on, but really the response to it, because he kind of fits that description. He's a big kid. He's quiet. He's kind of standoffish, and it's really shyness. But nobody's gonna really take that time to figure it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in Texas, yeah, I try to not scare him, but I want him to be aware of how to handle situations. But ultimately, I want to get him out of there. I want to get him up here with me in Colorado.
Yes.
So,
And you're coming from Austin, Texas, right?
yeah, I was in the Austin area.
Yeah. So, I've been to a lot of different places in Texas, and Austin certainly seems a lot more liberal or democratic, or it seems like they've got their finger on the pulse as far as what's going on right now, um, as opposed to like other places like Houston or Dallas, or out in the boonies of Texas are probably a lot more conservative. um, so what is I hear these stories, right, of people in Texas just open carry all the time, and if everyone has a gun, it'll prevent more crime and things like that. And I partially agree with that. You know, I have a concealed carry. Sometimes I open carry if I'm camping, things like that. Um, but I mean, what are your thoughts on? I haven't been hearing much news coming from Texas, this open carry state, as far as like gun violence as related to the riots and the protests.
Yeah, I haven't heard too much either. Seen a couple of photos where they were using rubber bullets or something like that,
Mhm.
but it's gotten too crazy. Um, yeah, that definitely the open carry or concealed carry. Texans love their guns for sure, and I too, I'm a gun owner and concealed carry. Um, you know, we had a couple of shootings there, and they were stopped pretty quickly, like that one at that church. I think it was in San Antonio or something.
Right, right.
So, me myself, I understand the need for it.
Yeah, you know, and that's I don't know. I don't for you. I don't know how you how did you develop like this idea of like readiness or you know, for me, you know, I've grown up around guns. I've done martial arts since I was 4 years old. I've been like sort of like an outdoorsman, survivalist type mindset since I was a teenager, and so I've always, you know,
Oh, nice.
yeah, I've always held this, yeah, always like made sure I have a backup plan and protection and food and all these things. Oh, that's my co-host, my dog. Um, but uh, but you know, that's what I think a lot of this stuff going on is why, you know, why it's really scary is because you know, when people can't get what they think are essential goods or food or whatever, shit's gonna start getting real, and people are gonna start hurting other people in order to get basic resources, and that's what's most scary to me about this situation.
Yeah, hopefully things will clear up. I know for me myself, growing up, I was born in Detroit, but you know, I left there when I was 2 and spent the most of my life in Texas. I just turned 43 a couple of days ago, and for the longest time, it was like a mental prison. It was fear. I was living in fear, you know, fear of just really on both sides, because I've always been kind of, you know, smart or intelligent, you know, so it didn't really fit, you know, like in the hood, quote unquote, because I did goofy things. Of course, I got out there and made mistakes and things too, but for the longest, it was kind of like living like an endangered species. I actually had a bit of a Facebook debate with a friend the other day, and he's white, and he was of, of the mind that they should start using live ammo when, you know, when the looting starts, the shooting starts, which is absolutely crazy. Um, and usually I just block people like that. But I took the time and I explained to him, like, first of all, that's the reason why there is this unrest. They're saying stop killing us, you know, so killing more people is not going to address that. And the other thing, I asked him, how would you feel if you were shown enough evidence to believe that you could be killed without any consequences, that someone can kill you and they won't go to jail and there won't be any justice? How would you handle that situation? When would you come to a conclusion of either I'm not going to go quietly, or I'm going to take as many people with me as I can, or are you just going to kneel and pray till somebody come and blows your head off? You know, he never answered that question. But that's a real question that a lot of us have to ask ourselves. Because unfortunately, as sad as it is, there's a huge discrepancy there. And people can make assumptions about me without even talking to me. And it can just escalate from there. And the way I answered that question is I want to be as prepared as I can. So physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, I want to improve myself. I want to be able to handle as many situations that I can come up with. So yeah, I want to strengthen my mind by reading and all of that stuff. I want to have a strong body, working out, doing jujitsu, and I also want to have a strong support system. I want to surround myself with the right people. And it took a while to. It wasn't until I was in my 30s till I started thinking that way. And now, like half my life is over. I'm like on double time. You know what I mean? Everything is like at an accelerated rate. I really want to get stuff done before my time is up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Some of the things you said really hit home for me too, and I know they were experienced differently than you. Um, but this idea, one of them, this idea of like, if myself or a friend of mine or a family member of mine was killed, and nothing, there was no justice served, that would just wreck me for my entire life. I think being a Buddhist, if my life was taken and there was no, you know, human justice dealt, I think I'd be more okay with that because I believe in karma. Um, and that would be
Mhm.
part of my karma too. But still, if it happened to somebody that I knew and there was absolutely no justice, that would completely wreck me. Another thing that you said, growing up as the smart kid and being sort of ostracized that way, even within your own community, I feel like I felt that too. Um, I mostly hung out with like, the skater crowd. I sold drugs in high school, but I also was a jock and played a bunch of sports. And then I was like a straight A student, right? So I was one of the, top students in all the high schools that I went to, and that really, I always felt, a little bit different, a little bit on the outside because I couldn't quite connect with, um, I guess, the level of consciousness that others around me were engaging in. So, talking
Mhm.
about, bitch this and bitch that, and let's go vandalize this and whatnot. My mind always was sort of repelled by that, but I wanted to engage in the activity, or I wanted to be liked, or I wanted to hang out with these certain people. So, I sort of had to dumb myself down sometimes in order to fit in, and it never
Mhm.
felt right. It never felt right. So, yeah, I identify with you on those somewhat, and that I think also, like you said, helped fuel my desire to want to be prepared. Right? I needed to. I was always in survival mode all the time, even with
Right.
even with my friends, because I didn't not want to fit in anyway.
Yep. And it's really hard to go like all in on something that you really aren't feeling, that you don't want to do.
Yeah. So you talked about assumptions, right? And people making assumptions of you. And I've talked a little bit about this from my experience in the past on the podcast. People make assumptions of me based off of my tattoos, or my stocky nature, or the way I wear my hat, or whatever. Some of the T-shirts I wear. And then if they get to know me, they get to know that I'm quite intellectual. Probably read more books than they have, and I like I like shocking people with what's underneath if they take the time to get past those initial assumptions. So I'm wondering for you, like, what are some of those assumptions that you recognize that people make about you? And yeah, just start there. Like, what are some assumptions that come up for you?
uh, Mostly, I would say I come off as a quiet person, but once you get to know me, I hardly shut up.
Yeah.
And I guess that is off-putting to people. And usually, if I see that there's really not a lot to somebody, if they really don't have a lot to say, or don't have much to say, or I'm really short with them, I cut the conversation off real quick. And I I'm starting to learn to take responsibility for myself for how I treat these people because I don't know how they're raised. I don't know what they were taught. I believe in nurture versus nature in most cases. So I'm trying to empathize more and be more open with just dealing with people. But that was another point I wanted to circle back to about the social issue. I was just talking to my lady about this. It's still one of the scariest things she ever heard me say. One of the scariest things I ever said to her was, "I'm getting pulled over." I was coming from the gym one day. We were talking on the phone, talking about something to eat and things like that, and I saw the lights behind me, and it was like, "Oh shit!" And I told her that, and she was like, "Leave the phone on, put it on speaker. I'm recording. Tell me where you're at." And it was like in the back of my mind, I was like, "Why do we have to go through all of this?" But it's just the way of the world, and I have to adapt. And when the guy talked to me, I was scared. I had my hands on the wheel, and he said license and registration. It was in my armrest. And as soon as he said it, I started reaching, and I stopped immediately, and I put my hands back up. I say, "It's in my armrest." Hold on a sec.
Sounds like your co-host is getting in on the show too. Looks like the mail is going out for both of us right now.
Sorry, just got a random delivery from Amazon or whatever.
I knew it. I knew it was the mailman.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, it's sad that that's the kind of world we live in, but I can't just shut down. I just have to respond. So I told him it's in my armrest, and I just need to reach over it. I don't want to make any fast movements. And he was like, "Oh yeah, man, it's cool. We've taken training for this. It's okay." And I don't know. It was just weird. I wanted to make sure I had brought that up, and I forgot your other question. Sorry.
No, I mean that's an important thing to bring up, and you know, your perspective is totally valid. And I'm of the same mind that however the world is, you have to adapt to survive. Period. Or else you're not going to survive. But at the same time, a part of me is like, well, Ontorio, why should you have to adapt to this? Like, this should not even be a thing that this should not worry. It should not be such an issue, in our country that, when you do get pulled over, you're fearing for your life. That's insane. I don't, a part of me doesn't want to have to adapt to that. A part of me wants to, bigger part of me wants to change that, wants that to not even be a thing. But I'm so like, as a white male, I'm so confused of like, what should I do? What can I do to help? It's so confusing for someone like myself who, you know and it's not my fault. I've been conditioned into, the role that I've played my entire life. People have told me, that's my position or that's my place, and I'm doing my best to unravel that and decolonize myself. But still, I don't feel like it's enough. I feel like whatever I can do to help, I will do, but I don't know what to do, and that's the problem for me.
Yeah, that's actually the problem for me too. It's hard to find a cause that doesn't have bullshit in it, you know?
Yeah.
These other causes, I want to get behind them and things, but just some things I don't agree with, but we have a common goal. So I just want to work from that. Me, myself, all I can do is just try to be the best me I can. If I see an injustice, speak up. And I think that's really the thing most people need to do. If they see something wrong, if they know something is not right, speak up. Tell the right people. And if they ignore it, tell the ones above them. That's the only way, because it's not really a battle that's going to be won with guns and on the streets. It's changing a mindset.
Mhm.
It's like the because I try to empathize with people, and it's like if my great great grandfather stole your great great grandfather's house and took his land and used it and like flipped it to make a huge profit, to build more houses and things. And I'm living life. I'm living my best life. And you're not doing so well. And you come to me and you say, hey, your great 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 grandfather took my land and ruined my life. I mean, what can I do? I can't just give you what I have. You know, it's a dilemma. But at least I cannot be a dick about it. I can make room, scoot over and make room. Of course, you can't save everybody. Some people do just want to have everything handed to them, but there are some people who are willing to put in the work. And for those, yeah, we just got to be able to scoot over and just make room. I think about that Chris Rock joke a lot, where he was like, if a black guy and a white guy take a test, if the white guy scores high, he should get the job. If the black guy scores higher, he should get the job. But if they tie, fuck. And I don't really totally agree with that, but I get the logic. I mean, it's like a pendulum swing, and you kind of got to keep it in the middle without knocking everybody off. It can't be all white, it can't be all black. It has to be in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I'm getting my PhD right now in social work, and one of the major topics that we discussed in this last year of academia was white oppression, and you know, white oppression as a much larger construct, right? So the United States, as we know it, right, was built off of slavery and built based on a white oppressive system that we transplanted from Europe. And it was developed for many hundreds of years before that, white male oppressive. And it's continued. It's gotten more covert, definitely, in some of our more modern age. And a lot of the laws that sort of support white oppression or practices that they're in line with that are still on the books and just haven't been removed. And so this is like a big thing, right? Like you said, you know, this pendulum swinging back and forth. It can't be all white, it can't be all black, it can't be all Hispanic, it can't be all one thing. We are a multicultural country, you know, and but a big part of it, a big chunk of it is identifying white oppression and then dismantling it to the greatest extent we can. And we call that decolonization, right? So stripping
Yeah.
away the colonization that happened because of white people. And you know, I I guess in my life I try and be more and more conscious as much as possible of like in whatever situation it is, like how does my skin affect how people are treating me or what sort of preference I'm getting. If I see, like you said, like I think it goes back to individual responsibility too. And if I see injustice happening, and if I see injustice happening where I'm being a benefactor of it, I need to stand up and say like this is not right. So it does come
Yeah,
down to an individual thing, but we're all working towards this collective goal of equity, right? Equal rights to freedom under the law. And in this modern age, I don't see why we're struggling so hard to do that. You know, I think we all want the same thing. You know, the protesters want the same thing. The cops want the same thing. We all want like peace among all of us. And more than anything these days, I feel like it's the media that is spinning this into conflict or spinning it into race war again, you know, maybe to be a control mechanism.
for sure, man. I wish that was illegal for news stations to, broadcast. That should be against the law. They try to stand behind, constitutional rights or whatever, but they're knowingly spreading false information, which is clearly harmful to society. And I wish that was something we could change.
Yeah, I read something the other day about like when like the New York Post or New York Times or Washington Post, puts out an article, it'll get like millions of reads, right? And this can be misinformation or fake news or whatever, and millions of people read it. Well, if they get caught, and this is if they get caught, and they do a redaction, they'll put that out too, and only like 50,000 people will read that. So then there's still these millions of people out there who didn't read the redaction, who are still believing the fake news, and the news knows that they'll get those readers right with the clickbait. So yeah, like you said, they're willingly and knowingly pumping out this fake, false information to control society, to control like the social agenda and the minds of these people. And it comes back down to, preparation, right? And you said preparing your mind. And part of that mind preparation is seeing through all the bullshit, seeing through all the conditioning mechanisms, all the propaganda, all the bullshit out there, and just getting down to, communication with real people.
Yeah, and that's the hard part. That's why I have political aspirations, because it's like this analogy. If you put 100 people in a room, how many of them would actually stand up before the crowd and say something? Like maybe 20. And out of that 20, how many of them actually have something to say? And that's, I don't know, 10, 15. And out of that, how many know how to say it? And from there, how many are actually willing to do what they're saying? And that's the path I'm going along. I want to be able to answer those questions and say me, because I have a hard time trusting what other people say, because a lot of people have their own agenda, unfortunately. But there are people out there who genuinely want to do the right thing. And you and I, we got to seek these people out and connect with them. We got to be the change we want to see and empower those people as best as we can. And like I said, stamp out the ignorance as best as we can. It's a long battle. We may not see the end of it, but we can do our part, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think everybody probably has motives, right? Even the best, most well-intentioned people out there, they still have motives behind their actions. But I think it's like we need to make a choice of which motives we want to promote and which motives we want to support and which ones we don't. If
Yep.
the motive is to get into office so they can make a bunch of money and fuck a bunch of people over, then those morals don't sound to align with mine. But if their agenda is to fix the environment and to clean up the ocean, then I can get behind that agenda. So I don't think we can eliminate agendas altogether, because the common goal is an agenda in and of itself, but we can certainly choose like which agendas we want to align with and which ones we don't. So your interest in political office, um, I mean, that's a hard job, Ontorio. What do you think about the realities of what it's like to be a politician? And I look around at these politicians right now during COVID and during the social issues going on right now, and I cannot imagine being in their position trying to make the decisions that they're being forced to make. So, I mean, that's a really hard job that you aspire for.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it for years and still preparing for it. I'm years away from being ready, but I know it's going to be a lot of resistance, and my family, my kids will probably see a lot of that. And right now, I'm just doing a lot of fortification with everyone. I just want to get everyone prepared as much as possible before all of that starts. But ultimately, I just want to be the change I want to see. I just want to do the best I can to implement the changes I think will make a better world. Like my craziest goal, and I know it probably won't fly well with a lot of people, but I think people should have to have a license to have kids. You have to have a license to drive. You have to have a license to fish. Pretty much anything else, you got to have a license for it. But to bring a human person in the world and to raise them however you want to raise them, and when they turn 18, you just okay, wash your hands just out into the world, and they get locked up in a prison or whatever happens. I think that's a job that should be taken a lot more seriously than is being taken right now.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that you're absolutely right. You're going to get a lot of pushback with a position like
Yeah.
that, but it makes sense in a lot of ways. And um, also, some licensure stuff is not. I don't think is appropriate. I think licensing to have a kid, it would be ultimately a good thing, right? Because we could help prevent overpopulation. Um, it is a form of population control though too. So it has good sides and bad sides. But on the licensure piece, just reading this thing the other day where they're trying to push through. Let's see, it says HR 5717, trying to push this House bill through in the fall that will require licensure to own or operate a firearm or ammunition. It will it'll add 30% tax to all guns, 50% tax on all ammo, uh,
Oh,
making it worse, like harder to get them. And so I think in some cases, like licensure is a bad idea. Like I don't want to be on a list, people knowing, what I have and where I can be found, and having a picture of me so that if they can identify me in the crowd, then they could take me out or something. Like that's some bad shit. But licensing for it's weird. I don't agree with licensure for guns or ammo, but I for the most part I agree with having to at least go through some sort of responsibility screening tool to make sure that you're going to be a fit parent and you're not like bringing in your 10th kid into the world and you're on welfare and you can't, uh,
yeah.
I feel for those people too, but you got to be responsible about this thing. Like, what kind of life are you setting up your kids for? There's got to be some kind of screening for that. And I think maybe, there should be mental health or certain mental health screenings or definitely background checks to get guns, but maybe that's as far
Yeah.
as it goes.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want everyone to be able to have a gun, you know. So I understand. But like I was saying with the pendulum, everything is, moderation, everything in moderation. Hold on one sec.
Yeah, man. Another thing too, like, so I have my medical marijuana card, um, and I do not want them to, they're trying to push these things like if you have ever had depression, you can't own a gun. If you have a medical marijuana card, you cannot have a gun. They're trying to push these things like if you have any sort of mental health history, you shouldn't be able to have it. Well, as a therapist, I'm telling you, everybody has struggled with mental health at some point in their life. It's just part of living, right? It may not be documented, it may not be on the record, but everybody has. And you can't like cut off people who were depressed or had a substance abuse issue in the past from protecting themselves, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you ask the right questions, you can turn somebody into, make them fit into any box you want them to fit in. And yeah, I think we all have a right to protection. I don't know why people would need like an AK though. I hadn't quite figured that out. I understand the need for like basic handguns. I think we have like two or three ourselves, but like the AKs and bazookas, and I mean, what's to stop somebody from getting a tank? There's got to be a limit there somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. And people do own tanks and bazookas. um,
Really?
Oh yeah, probably like private, wealthy individuals.
Oh man, I couldn't imagine a tank rolling through these streets, man. Wow.
But imagine this too, right? Like, say there is martial law and troops come in the streets and they're all decked out in their high tech military equipment. Like a handgun is not going to do too much, even to they're all wearing body armor, and I'm not saying like um, I'm just saying like we need to be on level playing field with the possibility of what sort of militaristic oppressive forces could come through. You know, God forbid we ever get invaded by anybody, but if anybody invaded our country, they'd have a really tough time making it through even a couple cities because there's people
Man,
armed to the teeth for a reason.
it'd be a comedy. It'd be a comedy if somebody tried to invade America right now.
It really would. You know, and I wonder if, you know, what is it going to take to bring everybody together on, you know, and get through this? You know, we've gone through this a number of times in our history, civil rights movement, a number of other movements and law changes, Supreme Court cases, things like that. And we still haven't reached that place of equity or of equality. So part of me thinks that, you know, like 9/11, you know, we're going to need something major to unite all of us under one banner, under the human race flag. And I thought it was going to be COVID. I thought it was going to be, you know, this worldwide pandemic that was going to suddenly unite us as a species. But that's not happening. And unfortunately, I think it's going to take some kind of like really bad natural disaster, or something massive for the human race to like overcome our petty differences and, you know, get on board with one race.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I feel like there'll always be some type of division, you know, even if it goes all the way back to men versus women. You know, there, for some reason, you know, humans need competition, need something to compare and push up against to get strong. And, you know, hopefully we can just get the right people. I think it'll take something like an alien race or something to invade us, to draw us all together where we don't see color or gender or nothing else. But I feel like it'll always be something, you know, but we just got to have a right, enough right-minded people to keep things under control.
Yeah, I do. I've been feeling the same exact way about the alien thing. Like, I think that's what it's going to take, you know, a whole nother race or species threatening our survival for us to get together and get past this. I heard another theory the other day from someone on a podcast saying, like, um, it might be that aliens aren't really revealing themselves to us yet because they're waiting for us to unite, right? Like, the aliens have already reached this place of higher consciousness and unity, and they have like an intergalactic federation, and they're all together, but they're waiting to initiate us into that. And all we have to do is unite. And the moment we do, you know, this whole other universe and time travel and wormholes is going to open up to us. I think it could be that way too, that it's up to us to do it, you know.
Yeah, I feel like if there are aliens out there, they've seen us and they just kept going, like, to hell with this. These people are crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I feel
But
like
the galaxy,
go ahead.
the galaxies, the universe is just too big for it just to be us. You know, there's one little speck of dust and this big old swirl of, you know, just everything. I think there are other beings out there, but yeah, I kind of don't want to meet them right now. I don't know how prepared we'd be.
Yeah. Yeah, I tell you know, there's been some stuff coming out during COVID where I guess the White House released some confirmation that there were, you know, identified UFOs by military planes, and you know, things like that. Like, there's been declassified documents that have come out, and it's all under the radar. Um, it's interesting because, again, you know, what would happen if what do you think would happen to their power structure if they all of a sudden, you know, release that aliens are real? You know, imagine the the outrage or the fear then that would happen. You know, we might not feel like we even need a government if that were to happen. So it's interesting, like all these things are coming out, and you know, you're right. We are way too big of a thing, this universe, to be alone in it. So part of me feels like, you know, the aliens are already here, or maybe we're the aliens and we're just waiting to evolve.
Hey, there's an idea too.
Yeah. So with your political stuff, right? you're preparing your family, right? Because you know when you go into the political sphere, they're just gonna dig into your past and look at old tweets and all sorts of stuff, dig into your family. So I like that you're like you're being responsible about it and you're preparing them in those ways. But when you think of like the criticism that comes along with political office, how ready do you think you are to stick up for what you want and what you think is right? But I mean, inevitably, there's going to be people who stand up and oppose you or who criticize you or who call you names or whatever. Like, how prepared do you think you are to deal with that kind of stuff?
Yeah, like they're saying, haters gonna hate.
But yep.
And they definitely will be around. I've dabbled in it a little so far. Like back in Texas, I was in the HOA, and that was like a crash course in dealing with people that don't or won't agree with you no matter what you say. And back then, I would lash out, I embarrass them, and things like that. I forgot what book I was reading, but it said you'll never change somebody's mind by calling them an idiot or making them feel like an idiot. And since then, I've just been trying to use empathy more. And there will be some people, no matter what I say, what I do, they'll they'll dislike me. I could want to buy ice cream for the neighborhood, and somebody would say, "Oh, I'm lactose intolerant," or "Why don't you have other flavors?" And for those people, all I can do is just try not to lash out and just keep doing the best work I can. Try to address reasonable people and not engage people who just want to make me get in the mud with them.
Yeah, it's like picking your battles every day, but extending it out even more and like picking the conversations that you choose to engage in, right? Like surrounding yourself with those people who are positive people as opposed to engaging with people who are just out looking for a fight.
Yeah, they're out there, and that's another reason why I took jujitsu, so I could be prepared for things like that. Because if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know how to fight or never really been in one, you you're going to be scared, and you're probably going to lash out and do the wrong thing every time. But once you've trained yourself, you can be calm in confrontational situations. And usually people will pick up on that energy and not try to test it. But in case someone does try to cross that line, at least we're prepared.
Yeah, for sure. Like since I started jujitsu, I don't know, 14 years ago, um, I've never felt anywhere down a dark alley, in a one-on-one situation. I've never felt like I couldn't get myself out of the situation. The skill sets and the mental skill set, the mental toolbox that comes with jujitsu, like prepares you for life in so many ways, including having that confidence and it's not a false confidence. Like you can legitimately get yourself out of a terrible situation with an opponent much bigger than you, and so you have like this it's like an added knowledge. Like you already know the outcome, you already know it's gonna come out with you on top, and so you can remain calm. But the more I get into martial arts, the more I do it, I'm getting closer and closer to a black belt, and
Mm,
the further I go, the less I like fighting. Like I hate
yeah,
fighting. Like I want to avoid conflict at any time that I can, because I know what's possible. I know what sort of damage can be done to a human body because I've trained in it. I know I know what I could do, and so I avoid it at all costs. I will talk my way out of any fight, and it's definitely not because I'm afraid. If anything, I'm afraid of ruining this person's life. Um,
yeah. You're
and
afraid for them.
right, and so I think that would be a benefit for a lot of people is if they had a discipline, if they got into some kind of a martial art or something where they experienced physical challenge like that, where you're training to protect your life, um, I think there would be a lot less violence out there. Just because I think a lot more people would have respect for the potential for real damage.
Yeah, because they see videos, they watch movies, and they think everything is, just gonna look so cool, and they're gonna be YouTube famous. But it's not really like that in the real world.
No, not at all. Um,
But another thing I was gonna say about jujitsu, that's one of the beauties. Like if we did get into a confrontation with somebody, we know how to restrain them and hold them down, and let them calm down and figure out that they're stuck. Versus somebody who's like a boxer or a striker, all they can do is knock somebody out and risk, letting them hit their head and dying from that or something. So that's one of the major benefits of jiu-jitsu. That's something I think should be mandated, especially for a law officer. They should be forced to train because essentially they're the military. So they should have that type of training and discipline.
yeah, absolutely. I think it was Anthony Yang who was running for president, and he said that he thought that all officers should at least be a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. And I thought that was a brilliant idea, not only because it would give them the discernment and the respect for physicality, but also it would help train the mind, and we would have a much fitter police force for sure. If everyone trained jujitsu, there would not be those cops out there that are 300, 400 pounds sitting behind a desk because they'd have to be training.
I know that's Yeah, I mean, God bless them because they're putting their self on the line for a dangerous job and stuff. But I mean, my goodness, who can they protect, chase down, and stuff? If anything, they're just going to shoot whomever they're dealing with.
Yeah, I think you're right. The less reliant you can be on your own body and your physical skill, the more reliant I think you're going to be on a firearm to protect you.
Yeah, and that kind of leads to the predicament that we're in right now. Just not knowing how to handle the situation.
Yeah. So tell me about your jujitsu upbringing. I don't think I've ever asked you this on the mat. I know that you trained in Austin, but I'd love to hear your story of like how you even got into it, what your progression looked like, what philosophy and life lessons you've learned from jujitsu.
Uh, let's see, I've been training, I think, 8 years now. I think I'd have to check my journal and see. But initially, think I was like 32, still fairly young enough. I wanted to fight in a cage, so I knew I needed to get some type of training. Of course, I saw Hoist Gracie and what he did and was blown away. And so I started out with Krav Maga, and of course that didn't last long. And tried out Sambo, and then once I moved, I got into jujitsu with the guy in the land area, John Ramsher, a good friend of mine. And he was a purple belt at the time, and I was scouting out gyms. And I liked how candid he was and upfront. He told me he was getting a black belt coming in soon and giving a free seminar. And so I went to that, and it was Rodrigo Cabral who it was. And just from there, I was just hooked ever since. And of course, there's the physical aspects, but I'd say my greatest obstacle was just the humility part, just the humbling, just shutting up and listening without just, oh, I feel like it should go this way or it should go that way. Just that discipline, I think, was the greatest takeaway because I was able to use that in pretty much every other aspect of my life. To just up and listen, hear people out, and try it. Because there there are other people who've been doing things for longer than me. I mean, like on the mat, they got some killers, you know, in every gym there are killers, like 15, 16-year-old guys, and they've been training since they were 4 and would wipe the mat. And I really had to let my ego go to enjoy myself when training, getting my butt kicked every day. You know, sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail. But that's the thing that got me hooked the most. I mean, on the mat, there's really nothing. The gi color at the most. I mean, belt color at the most probably matters. But outside of that, it don't matter. You know, your culture, your skin color, what you do for a living. Are you ready to train and be respectful of your partners? That's, you know, and work hard. That's the main thing. And if that's a yes, I can train with anybody and anywhere. And that's what I learned from jiu-jitsu. As long as those fundamental things are in place, I can pretty much work with anybody on anything. So that's the greatest gift that jiu-jitsu gave me.
Man, I love that. Jiu-jitsu really does tear down a lot of those walls, right? Um, I
Oh
mean,
my God.
I mean, any given day at Z's, you could be training with, you know, multiple ethnicities, different genders, different sexual orientations, whatever, different styles of martial arts. Nobody cares. Like, we're all ripping on each other. We're all laughing and inviting each other out to dinner. And it becomes, you know, a very multicultural family. And I love that about it. You know, I also love the humility piece that you talked about. And man, do you become humble quick as a white belt. And the more,
Oh,
yeah, you know, getting tapped out 100 times in an hour is humbling for sure. And then the more you keep going, the more persistent you are, the more open you are, right? Like shutting your mouth and listening to the people with higher belts and how they do it. Like they've already failed more times than you've ever tried, bro. Like listen to what they have to say. Um,
yeah.
the higher up in the belt that you get, the more humble you get, but along with that humility comes like this, like I said, like this confidence, but also this toolkit of you know, really murder moves, moves that are gonna,
Yeah.
you know, incapacitate someone if necessary, but are designed to control with the least amount of force possible.
Yeah, you have a choice. I mean, it's one of the few arts where you can literally break every joint in somebody's body.
Yeah,
Like arm locks, shoulder locks, knee locks, ankle locks. It's all there. And
and
after a while, it's not even
and
about
bone
learning
breaks.
how to kill.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, what do you say?
I said, and there's chokes and bone breaks too.
Oh yeah, man. It's it is like Disneyland almost. Whatever you want to do, if somebody chooses to go into that arena with you, it's like it's almost kind of fun to think about, but it's scary too because I don't want to go there, you know.
Yeah.
But on the mat, it's training. It's all fun. Like I love training with you guys and just getting that sweat in and getting my butt kicked and you know everybody's cool. You know, it's not any in politics. I mean, I know people try to add that in or whatever, but usually it's shut down pretty quick. I love how it's just jiu-jitsu, you know, no drama, just jiu-jitsu. Oh, that was a point I wanted to bring up, like Rodrigo. That he's pretty. I'd say 90% of what I've learned came from Rodrigo. You know, he's from white belt to purple. I mean, there have been times where I stepped away for different reasons or whatever, but he's always like been my main influence. And like when I was a white belt, one of the things I noticed about him, sometimes he would just kind of like halfway roll. I mean, he would let everybody tap him out, white belts and everything. I mean, as long as they were safe and stuff like that. And I asked him later, I was like, why do you do that? Because I know he could smash everybody in there twice over if he wanted to. And he said to remain humble because it's easy to get arrogant and overconfident when you can do things like that. So he said just to keep himself humble, he allows himself to get topped out. And I was like, wow. that was, just mind blown. And I've always remembered that sticks with me. So like when I roll, I don't really care about a tap. I care about learning, calibrating my own moves and dealing with different body types and things like that. It's not the victory is being better than I was yesterday, not making somebody else tap.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when you're on the mat, I mean, as a white belt, I definitely felt like I was in, it was a self-imposed competition with everybody else on the mat. I had to outwork you. I had to outbreathe you. I had to outroll you, even if you were going to tap me. And now a lot of that is gone. Now, like you said, I go in there and I want to learn. I'm I'm just scratching the surface of the infinity that is jujitsu, and it's so exciting. 14 years deep into it, and I feel like I've just
Wow.
I've maybe learned 1/100th of the information that's currently available, and new moves are being made up every single day. It's ever expanding. Um, Ontorio, I had no idea your upbringing included Krav and Sambo. That's like almost word for word how I started my journey, through jiu-jitsu. I mean, I had a bunch of martial arts coming up when I was a kid, taekwondo, karate, wrestling, things like that. But martial arts fell off for me at the end of high school when I got into drugs real deep. And I didn't rediscover it until I went to college and got back into Krav Maga and became an instructor there. And that led me to a Sambo black belt, and he taught me how to
Oh
fight.
wow.
And then I started cross training jujitsu with my Sambo to get a stronger ground game, and then as I got a little older, and I don't like my joints to be hurting every day. I don't like to wake up with post concussive syndrome as much as I used to. I've stepped
Hmm.
away from striking a lot. I still do it, but not as much. And now it's almost purely jujitsu. And I tell you what, like since I made that switch and just like embrace the jujitsu lifestyle, it's almost like the stereotypical like beach bum surfer type lifestyle in my mind. Like it's super laid back and chill and just like in touch with yourself and in touch with nature and almost like hippie-esque. And I'm loving it. I'm really loving the lifestyle that comes along with jujitsu. It's not just a sport or a practice that I'm practicing when I'm on the mat, but it's something that I practice in every moment of every day of my life.
What about your jiu-jitsu journey too? Because I noticed I would want to say our styles are similar. You're better than me. You have a like athletic style though, which is something I'm kind of familiar with. I don't have the cardio or anything like that to go with it. But like, where did you start? Like my branch was more like the Checkmat Alliance branch.
You mean what branch of Sambo?
No, not Sambo. I was asking about you. Just sorry, I
Oh,
just skipped right over Sambo. Uh,
sure. Yeah, I
yeah,
started
that was my first.
I started at a Gracie school in Boulder, Colorado. It was a Easton Brazilian Jiu Jitsu school, and they're right now. I think they have the most number of schools in Colorado. They're huge. Hundreds of people go through Easton. If you go to the tournament, that's almost all you see. But when I moved away from Boulder, I trained a little bit down at High Altitude, which is Nate Marquardt's gym. Nate Marquardt from the UFC and King of Pancrase. Trained down there for
Mhm.
a little bit, and didn't live down there for too long. So I moved back up to the Fort Collins area, and my Sambo coach from back in the day, who was also my MMA coach, Michael Sullivan. He's been on the podcast a couple times. Still down in Broomfield at Fusebox MMA, Fusebox Sambo, and he recommended I go to Z's. He said, I said I need a gym up here. What do you recommend? And he said this is sort of like our sister gym. They have similar values and ideals as us, and you'll get along just great. And from the moment I walked into Z's, Z was nothing but welcoming, and you know, I've been there ever since.
Yeah, yeah, the gym is awesome. I love the culture there. But yeah, going back to the Sambo, I did that for maybe a year, something like that. And yeah, it was awesome. My coach was Grant Gillum. He and his wife, they ran it together. It was kind of like an MMA gym. It was mostly like combat sambo, and yeah, that's some hardcore stuff, dude. The leg locks and stuff like that. It's just it's hardcore.
That's where I got most of my leg lock game, as well as my pressure point game, and man, it was awesome. Sambo is an intense freaking sport, man, and I'm so grateful to have had at least a few years of training under Sully. So Sambo kind of ingrains like a different kind of mindset in you too. It's Russian based, so we all know the stereotypes about Russian mindset. Hard, stoic people. Um,
Yeah,
that's really that came through at least in my Sambo training. That we trained ourselves for war, literally, and and prayed that we didn't ever have to use it. But it was a hard mindset. It was a grinding type mindset, and I still carry that a bit with me today.
yeah. It's I remember the takedowns and stuff like that. It was tough, man. It definitely like we had like throw mats and things like that, but it was still, we definitely protected each other. That's something you, of course, as a teammate want to do. But yeah, I remember those ankle locks. Some of them I still use too, and I have noticed that you do play with the legs a lot. I always try to watch that. But my God, how long have you been training with Z? Because you're almost like his clone.
In a lot of ways, yeah. My style, Z's a pressure jujitero, so he's a giant gorilla of a man, and he uses pressure in a way that I've never experienced by anybody else, and that comes from his wrestling background. And so, inevitably, by training underneath him, my wrestling has gotten way better since, the wrestling days in high school. And I've incorporated a lot of pressure into my own style. Now, what I think is important for everybody learning jujitsu out there is that that's gonna, understand that that's gonna happen. You're gonna take on traits of your professor, but also it's important once you start getting up into the higher belts that you start exploring outside of what he's taught you, right? So I think one of I think every professor wants their students to be better at jujitsu than they ever were. That's what a good instructor would want for you. And so,
Yeah,
and so Z wants to impart all of his knowledge onto me, which I take very gratefully. But he also encourages me to explore my own style. And so I'll do a lot of things that he doesn't do. Like I love inverted guards. I love, like you said, leg locks. The whole lower body is like my jam. I'll do
yeah,
calf crushes, bicep crushes, all sorts of fancy ninja moves with the lapel, and those are little additions that I like from other people's styles that I try and incorporate on top of that foundation that Z gave me. And I'm so grateful for Z because his style, that pressure style, is one of the best foundations that I've come across. I think that and like a rubber guard foundation would be my top choices if I could choose. But the pressure is so useful, and it just helps amplify every other style that I'm attempting to do, you know?
yeah. Now, what I meant by when I say the clone, I mean just so strong because like Z's probably the strongest dude I've ever rolled with so far, and it was like crazy just how strong he was, and then rolling with you, like I don't know what I was. I think it was like a sweep or something I was going for, and you just would not move. I was like, my God, what is this, man? And like, I think like I was trying to hold you in side control, and I just couldn't hold you down. Just that's what I was talking about. Just like crazy strong. It forces me to get over it, you know, like I just cannot do this move. I have to be like water and go to something else, or, you know, be ready to get swept, or, you know, just move on to another move. And I've been learning a lot of that. Just a lot of the guys and when I was there, they just won't give up. It's like trying to have a debate and they're just saying no, 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 no. And I'm like, the technique is right. You have to go. And it's like, no, fuck you, go. I still have energy. And yeah, man, that's the hardest pill to swallow right now. That's what I'm still trying to get used to, just keeping up and keeping the cardio going.
Yeah, for sure. You just got to keep moving. It's funny you say that one of my characteristics is my strength, because I don't really think of myself as being strong for my size. I tell my wife that all the time, like, and it's probably just distorted self-image for sure. But I mean, look who I'm competing against all the time, right? Z, who's this massive guy who's twice as strong as me. Of course, I don't feel, I feel puny next to him, and so when he's my strength comparison, of course I would think, I'm not a strong guy, but I guess, compared to most other people, and my wife says this all the time. She's like, most people your size or your age, like they've got the dad bod going on, like they haven't worked out. You can like outlift anybody your size and outlast them. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever, I blow it off. But um, it's interesting to hear that from you too, and recognizing that strength is one of my strong suits. No pun intended. But I try and rely less and less on it when I'm rolling. I definitely have to use it with bigger people, but especially with smaller guys. Most of the people in the gym are smaller than me, so I try and let the strength go. Unless I get into an emergency situation. But I try not to rely on it, and that boosts my jiu-jitsu game so fast. Um, I wish I would have learned that sooner.
Oh, for sure. That's like one of the first lessons I tell anybody. Just forget about your strengths. Any athletic gift you have, forget about it. You know, whoever you go against, be the weakest, be the slowest, and learn to rely on technique and anticipation. Because eventually you're going to get tired and too weak to do whatever you want to do. So you that's what you're going to have to rely on is proper technique.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I do, I think I think you moved to the right place, and came to the right gym. I know you had your choice of many other gyms in town, but I think you came to the right one, because I tell you what, like Z has so much knowledge in that brain, and it's just, he still teaches me new stuff all the time. I've been training with him for close to 7 years, I think.
Oh, I see. So you're about to be a black belt then, huh?
Yeah, I got 2 stripes on my brown, but I'm trying to really take whatever time is necessary at this belt. I know that this is a really important one to really solidify the style that I've been working on. Whereas at like purple belt, I was exploring. That was like the exploratory belt where you get to try out all sorts of fun things. And brown belts where you start to slow down your own game and start to integrate movements that really are high percentage for you and really solidifying what your game is. And then at black belt, you start all over again, man. And then it's a whole new world. You become a small fish in a shark tank of black belts. So I'm looking forward to it, but I'm also thoroughly enjoying where I'm at right now. I'm really enjoying coaching everybody at Z's when I can. And yeah, man, it's all about the journey too. It's what is one
For
of the
sure.
Gracies. One of the Gracies said, "The belt only protects 2 inches of you. You have to protect the rest of you."
Yeah, and that's the mindset I'm on too. I used to be in a rush to, go to be a black belt, but not at all because that's once you're a black belt, you're a black belt. You get the stripes, the degrees, or whatever, and if you're lucky to live long enough to coral or whatever the case. But this is kind of like the fun part here. you can still like make mistakes and it's not so bad because you're a lower belt. But like you said, when you get to that level, it's a whole nother ball of wax, you know. I'm not in a rush, but I definitely want to be around to see you get your belt for sure. And it's going to be an awesome ceremony.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll get whipped quite a bit. Um, um, so
Oh,
yeah, so I wanted to this is like a sort of a out of left field question, but we were talking about police having jujitsu training, and this thought just crossed my mind that I thought before, but just popped in again. What if politicians had to have military or not military martial arts training, um, and that's how they resolve disputes?
oh man, that would be awesome. I'd
It,
love that.
It'd be funny, but I think we'd have a couple people dominating at the top. Hopefully, they'd be ethical, moral people. But I just imagine like Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin getting in a fight, and Putin is, he's a judo black belt, and man,
Yeah.
he would slam Trump through to China, and then they'd have their way with him.
yeah, a scary guy on a lot of levels. I, just for our sake as a country, I wouldn't want to see that because they're already laughing at us enough as it is.
Yeah, for sure.
Put
So
them on the mat in the cage. I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no. So with you and your jujitsu background and like all the mental, physical, emotional, spiritual benefits that have come from jujitsu, how does that how does that bleed into your everyday life, and how do you think that that would affect how you are as a future politician?
Mostly, to me, empathy is the best teacher. Most of the times, if you put somebody in a situation, they'll understand it. And jujitsu puts you in a lot of different situations that can be scary, and you learn to build that mental resilience that it's not over. I can keep going. I can get back up. I can tap and it's not okay. I mean, I can tap and it's not the end of the world. It's okay. We can start over again. And, that helps a lot because like we were talking about humility, so many times I would roll with somebody and be like, how did you do that? Or why couldn't I do this? And that's a tough pill to swallow. Just asking somebody for help. And then, just first you got to come to terms with the fact that you're wrong, that, and once you can swallow that pill, then you can go on to being right, being in the right direction. And I think jujitsu teaches you a lot to swallow that pill because a lot of times you're going to be wrong. You can be so confident about something and feel so strong about it and get caught right into a trap. And you either going to go to sleep or get an arm broke or something or tap and swallow that truth pill. You have some developing to do. Um, and I believe not just with cops, I think it should be in schools too. Like if I get it, if I am able to make that happen, it will be in the sport, just like football, wrestling, or anything else. It's that important to because that confidence is everything. Just like you were saying, I had no idea that that's that's not your strength is not something that you really like relied on or reveled in. And me myself, maybe I have physical attributes that I ignore or something. I don't think I have anything in particular, but I'm sure other people would. And it's just a matter of you got to know who you are, and once you get that straight, once that internal person is good, then you can interact with other people. Cops are on the front line. So, I would say it's more urgent to address law enforcement right now because they deal with so many people and they have so much power and all this other stuff. So they need to learn it first. But I think ultimately it would do wonders in schools too. as far as bullying and, all of the things that have been going on in there.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting you talk about jujitsu, police training, things like that. I was just talking to the director of training for the Denver Police Department yesterday in a different context. Right now, I'm on the Denver psilocybin policy review panel, and we're reaching out to law enforcement. We're going to provide them, as well as first responders, we're going to provide harm reduction training around like how to deal with people on psychedelics so that we don't traumatize more people and we can more effectively deal with them. So it's interesting because as we talk to him, he's telling us about how long this last weekend has been for him, sleepless nights, lots of worry, lots of sadness of what's going on, media just blowing him up on his phone. And he's a great guy. We hit it off right away, and there are really good people in there trying to do really good things, and it's sad for them too to see this stuff go on. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of changes to police training. There should be. By the way, if you do when you get in political office, come hit me up, because in my sports psychology master's program, I had to design a school curriculum for jiu-jitsu in order to like implement it into a school system. So I already have a plan for that. So if you want to get it into schools, come to me and we'll spark up some ideas. I think that would be amazing. Things like judo, things like jiu-jitsu, they're Olympic sports, or jiu-jitsu will be soon. And there's no reason why those can't be trained alongside wrestling in a wrestling room. I think that's a fantastic idea for youth development.
Me too. And my only concern, well, it's not really a concern, it's almost inevitable. Uh, I noticed that like when things come to the United States, we kind of like take it over and we bastardize it. We throw away a lot of things like boxing and wrestling. Some people don't consider that a martial art, but it's absolutely a martial art. It's just because you don't bow and have this and that. And there's a concern. I know, like with some people I talk to, there's a concern that that will happen to jujitsu, but it's kind of inevitable to me. What do you think?
Inevitable that will kind of bastardize jujitsu.
Yeah, it'll kind of get watered down in a way. I mean, there'll still be like a pure form of it if you look in the right places. But like McDojos and things like that, I think that will like get spread out. And of course, it's not going to be Brazilian jiu-jitsu no more. It'll be just jiu-jitsu, things like that.
Well, I definitely think there's the possibility, and I think they already exist. There's some McDojos out there with American Jiu-Jitsu or something like that. There's that potential, but I've been in a lot of different martial arts, a lot of martial arts that sort of embody that McDojo, karate, and taekwondo. Some gyms definitely are really shitty gyms, but in my experience, more jujitsu instructors and gyms realize, what it takes to get a black belt, 10 years solid training at least. They respect, the time and effort. And so they're really quick to call out fake black belts and to get those kind of schools shut down. Or so I think that the jiu-jitsu community will largely prevent that intense kind of bastardization, but sure, there's going to be lost traditions, things like that. What I do like, what I do see out there is that, jiu-jitsu is an ever-growing sport, right? So it started out in Japan, then came to Brazil, and now it's in America and all over the world. And we have our own style of jiu-jitsu for sure. But the innovation that I've seen, even since it's come to America, I mean, you look at like places like 10th Planet and Eddie Bravo and his rubber guard system, like that's an American style of jiu-jitsu, and it's phenomenal, right? Gordon Ryan, all these people who are coming up and just inventing new shit and taking it to a whole new level. Like, yeah, we lose a little bit of tradition, but the sport and the knowledge and the, the arsenal grows. And these are real moves. People aren't inserting like fake jujitsu moves, and if they are, they're discredited relatively quickly. So I think in the long run, the jujitsu community is strong enough to avoid, the old school McDojo. But if it did go into schools, we would, it'd just be like another gym. You gotta call out those schools that are teaching bullshit to our youth.
Right. It's an exciting time. I think it'll go over well once we get to that point. Like I said, right now, I would say law enforcement is the main thing. That should be like mandated to have real training. But once I get to a certain level, I'll train them for free. I've already talked to a couple of police officers about it just to see what that process would be, because ultimately that will help overall. It's not about money; it's about making a better world, or at least a better society. I mean, that's just, I might be wrong, but that's what I think. I think it would go a long way. It might not fix everything, but it would definitely help more than hurt.
Yeah, I think you're right. I definitely think you're right. Um, so just kind of switch topics a little bit. This is also relevant, recent, but it seems like we were all on lockdown for the last couple months, right, because of COVID. And
Yeah.
since this last weekend, I hear very little about COVID, and that just really interests me that we go from this worldwide pandemic where everybody's afraid of literal, wiping out of the human species, that kind of fear. All of a sudden, it's not even in the news. Nobody's talking about it. It's all about protests, and I'm all for the protests. I'm not for the destruction, but I'm for the protests and the cause. But what about other things that sort of are? It's interesting. We just see this news cycle, even with these super major catastrophic events, people just forget about it, and I'm really afraid that people are going to forget what we just went through with COVID, um, and go back to normal way of life, or what was normal before, and destroying the planet.
Yeah, man, I'm just ready for it to be over. I mean, just the whole thing. When I saw that it was like 98% recovery rate or something like that, I just kind of tuned out after that. I've been enjoying the Cuomo interviews and things, but other than that, it does seem like it's a game. And now it's like, okay, now let's talk about Hornets or whatever is next. And I don't know if it's every, like when it's election year or something, but it does seem to be some type of trend there, or some type of pattern.
Yeah, it's all fear, right? Fear, fear, fear. They're like giving everyone an IV drip of fear as long as they're hooked up to the machine. And I've unplugged myself from the machine, mostly. I hardly watch the news. Most of the news I get is from friends who watch the news, and I'm just, I see all the anxiety that the news brings them. I just don't want any part of it, and I make a choice not to support, you know, not to support that kind of stuff, I guess.
Yeah, man. It's enough to make you not want to go outside, make you not want to get out of bed. It's just like every angle, there's just something. And that's what I was talking about earlier about just fortifying and focusing on the things that I can adapt to. But this COVID thing, like wearing masks and stuff, my daughter, she was like, I don't want you to come down here. And I'm like, wow, I get it because that's everything that's going on. But goodness, I'm more worried about if the economy is going to be able to bounce back. Because you hear about people losing jobs and businesses closing. Yeah, it's like we're not even in the real storm yet.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we've seen the worst of it. Um, this is interesting, right? So you're talking about people losing businesses, and I think that's going to be one of the biggest, things that we have to recover from is this huge unemployment rate, people getting evicted, things like that. But I read an article this morning saying that some of the places that were burned down, some of the businesses that were burned down in certain cities were like the business owner wasn't able to keep it because of COVID. And then that shop was targeted to burn down to collect
Oh
insurance
wow.
money or something like that. So there's all sorts of things going on. And like I said before, people will find a way to take advantage of this crisis in any way possible. I'm not saying that that's, the majority of people by any means. I think most people just want to help. I certainly do. But, it's interesting. You got to be wary because there are people out there, like you said, who have different agendas and they want to get theirs before there's no opportunity to.
Yeah, it's like that saying, you know, a man will lie to you to get what he wants and then tell you the truth when he's done. That that's just like with these politics and stuff. They talk, they sound real good, but if you look at the track record and things, it's like it's not consistent. And then it's like, oh, but this time it's gonna be different. It's like, my goodness.
Yeah. So from your position, looking forward to politics, like what sort of office are you looking towards?
Still trying to figure things out right now. I would like to, be in legislation, work with the law. So maybe Congress or the Senate, somewhere around there. I don't want to be like a governor or anything like that because that seems like just more of a figurehead. You really can't push your own agenda in those situations. You kind of got to go with what what the majority says, and so I don't want to get too crazy with it, but I do want to at least be in a position where I can introduce some law and give my side on why I think that would be good.
Yeah, nice. What do you think about I mean, some people are saying that this current system of politics that we have is outdated, that we shouldn't have a president, should be more parliamentary, like more evolved political systems in Europe. What do you think about that? Do you think like we need like a huge reform of what our democracy looks like? Take this one power figure out of the picture and sort of distribute power among many people? Like, what do you think?
I think that would take a revolution to happen, but I agree. I mean, this country's way too big to be represented just by two parties, and the other ones are just minimized and muted out. But to implement that type of change where we had like a parliament or something, it'd be nice. I don't think that would happen, not without a lot of bloodshed.
Yeah, I agree. I think so too. I'm a big supporter of the Constitution and Bill of Rights, but I also feel like some of the parts are outdated, other parts still hold up. But we're not the same country we were when it was formed, and we need to recognize,
Really?
we need to accept that we're different. We're more we're more inclusive than we used to be, even though it's still not at a level where we want it to be. We're way more inclusive than it was. We're different, and we need to sort of step up to the plate, step into our role as this. We can be leaders in this global shift. I think if we stand together. Unfortunately, I hope it doesn't have to come to a lot of bloodshed for that to happen. But that's what people are saying. That's what people who are rioting are saying, that this is the only way to be heard is to cause violence. I say, vote with your dollar. Don't support businesses that are oppressive or that you don't agree with their morals. Um, you know, I always think there's a peaceful way to do it, um, even if it is a slower process.
Yeah,
It's like
that,
jiu-jitsu. It's like
I,
jiu-jitsu. There's always a better technique. You know, you just got to find the right technique to overcome like this barrage of strength coming at you, because strength is not going to win all the time. You can't rely on it. You can't rely on force. You can't rely on coercing people or social manipulation. There's a more peaceful way that probably takes less effort and will burn us out less than what we're doing right now.
Yeah, I feel like we just got to have the right people in place for that to happen, because right now it's so easy to get stonewalled on making any type of real advancement on something. There's paperwork here, paperwork there, and oh, it got denied, so now you got to appeal this. And yeah, it can get really frustrating sometimes depending on what the situation is. Like this current situation, like me myself, I had to check myself, because I was like, I wish a motherfucker would ask me where I'm going and all of this stuff. But it's like, hey, there's a really, really bigger situation going on than just my personal feelings. It's almost a war going on right now, kind of like a social war, and it's not going to be won by force. It's a group effort. It's not just blacks against whites. There are whites on the quote unquote black side who are just tired of it and don't want to live in that world either. And I think that falls short of some people's sight. They think that it's just this broad stroke division of other people who just hate us and want us to die or be enslaved or whatever. Well, that's just not the case, and it's just it's so complex. You can't just wipe out everybody. You kind of got to do your due diligence and connect with the right people and disconnect with the wrong people. I mean, there's so many people where it's in their family. They were raised to think a certain way about black people, and if they bring them around, they would be treated differently, disowned, and all of this other stuff. And you can't just wait for these people to die, because they have grandkids, and their grandkids are probably mixed with something else, and it's just I don't know, man.
No, I
It's
think it,
sad, but
it comes back down to that individual responsibility, right? Like my grandma, she did genealogy in her spare time. So that's like looking up into our ancestors and our
yeah,
history. And she found that, my bloodline in this country goes all the way back to the Mayflower on both sides, which is kind of interesting to think about. And
hmm,
so my whole family in the beginning parts of this country, engaged in what was normal back then socially. So they had housekeepers that were black, and, um, you know, I don't know if they, owned slaves or not, but still they engaged in what was the social norm. I can even remember my great granddad. I would visit him in Wichita, Kansas, and till the day he died, he had like three black housekeepers. And I would love going over there. They would just spoil the shit out of me and my brother. And
hmm,
but it was still, I recognized that at a very young age, like, oh, this is interesting. All of his staff are of the same race. And so my family engaged in that. And part of what I was getting to, this personal responsibility, like it's it's my responsibility as a white male to recognize, how I unknowingly most of the time engage in white oppression, or the continuing of the dominant, patriarchy that's oppressive, and recognize what my family did, and do something different. That's my responsibility, is to look at because I didn't engage in anything, like that myself. And I think it's easy for newer generations to just sort of dismiss it and be like, oh, well, I've never owned slaves. Well, yeah, but
right.
your family is probably connected to something like that. And I'm not saying we need to take responsibility for our ancestors, because I have no control over that. But I need to recognize that that's what I come from, and to do whatever I can from whatever position of white power I'm in right now because of the color of my skin. I need to do whatever I can to utilize that to help marginalized and oppressed people have a voice and to get some things changed, man. Like that's my responsibility, is to do that, and I hope that others listening to this recognize that that's what they have to do too, to dismantle that.
Yeah, I mean, because it's going to take a group effort. Even during the civil rights movement, white people were killed who were trying to help, freedom riders and things like that. And, the onion of it all is just about every culture at one point or another was enslaved.
Yeah.
You know, you look at the Romans, they enslaved Europe and, called them what, Gauls or whatever. And of course, Africa and with the Hebrews and the Christians making them build pyramids or whatever. It's not just, unfortunately, it seems like America was the only or the worst, but yeah, it's been something that's just been a part of our society since probably the beginning of time. That doesn't make it right. It needs to be addressed and recognized, but I don't think it's not going to be a switch or anything like that to flip it over. Because even with these things that should have brought us together, like 9/11, to see the towers fall, that was heartbreaking. But then to see all these civilians of different cultures and races lining up, volunteering to help get people out of there, that was awesome. But at the same time, then all of the hate and everything started going to the Middle East and people who come from that country. It's like there's always going to be a I don't know, someone to hate or whatever, someone to blame, unfortunately. And there's just not enough of internal looking to saying, what am I doing to help or hurt the situation? So I'm glad to hear you say that. And yeah, I hope people are listening. It's not about race really, but it is. But ultimately, it's just good people and bad people. And we just need to get more good people out there as best as we can because things are kind of going to shit right now.
Yeah. So I don't want to leave the show on a sad note because I think we're all feeling some of the initial impacts, and will feel some of the longer lasting impacts of what's going on right now. But I'd like to leave us on more of a positive note. Someone that I really look up to, and I'm sure you've heard in the news. What do you think about Mike Tyson coming back and looking for a fight? Having his inner fire reignited and looking for a return fight. What do you think about
Man, I don't know, man. I think that ship sailed. I
that? You think
mean,
so?
he's often against Tyson Fury or something like that. I don't think that would be realistic.
Think he smokes too much weed?
No, I don't think he smokes, but maybe he don't smoke enough. Like out there, because I listened to his podcast and he was talking to Sugar Ray Leonard about how he didn't want to be back in that mindset. And now he's kind of right back in it.
Yep, I agree. I agree. He was talking to Rogan about that too. How even working out would ignite his ego, and he was trying to get rid of that, and cannabis was really helping him with that. And then all of a sudden, he made this switch, and he's like, "Holy shit! Like now my ego is reignited." And I've heard rumors that he would fight Tito Ortiz in an MMA match. I heard that he would fight Tyson Fury. I heard that he would box Evander Holyfield. Um, I think it would be interesting, whatever matchup he gets. I would just love to see old Mike back in the ring. He still seems pretty vicious.
I gotta say, man, his boxing was beautiful. I mean, for him to be the size that he was, like those guys, I mean, to do what he did, it was awesome, you know. And these, to me, I think Leonard is like the greatest of all time, but Tyson's accomplishments, I didn't even think he was a true heavyweight to be fighting at that. He was more like a cruiserweight or something, just off his size. But yeah, he had beautiful boxing, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm wondering how much power he's got left in those old hands.
Shit, I'll throw my hat in the ring. Hell, you want to have an MMA fight? I'll go ahead and go around or two with Tyson.
Yeah, as long as they pay you a couple
Go to a
million bucks.
straight yeah, not boxing though. Either
No.
jiu-jitsu or MMA, then going straight to the ground. But on second thought, no, I don't want that. I'm good.
Yeah, Leg Lock City, right?
Yeah, but still, I mean, he is Tyson. He has that mentality, and just for him to go through what he went through and to make it, I mean, that story is just extraordinary. You know, because he definitely could have ended up in prison or something, but he ran into the right person and who was able to connect with him and flip that switch. And one of the greatest fighters of all time.
Yeah, I agree.
Hey, what about that John Jones? He was taking the spray cans from those kids.
Um, I mean, I'm a huge fan of John Jones. I hung out with him a number of years ago before he was champ in New Mexico one night, Albuquerque, and he's a blast. You know, he's really nice, really fun. Um, but man, I think he makes some decisions that are questionable. And who wouldn't, you know, being in his position too? Like I mean, I don't think I'd do some of the stuff he did, but for sure, like, you know, living that kind of lifestyle is super tempting. As far as the spray cans, like I don't know. Part of me, it just seemed a bit staged. Um,
Oh,
and I think, you know, it's a good thing, you know, if it's real and he's taking them away, like, sure, like we should not be destroying our own communities. You know, take the spray painting to corporate America, who's been oppressing you on a much higher level, and deface their buildings. So if
mm,
John Jones was protecting his own community, like by all means do that and use your status, use your celebrity to do so. I saw Chuck Liddell doing something similar in Huntington Beach. I saw an article about that. So I think that's really good. But to me, it just seemed a little bit staged, and all the publicity that he got afterwards, it seemed like him and his publicist were probably trying to get some pump some positive media out there about John Jones, because I think like a week or two ago, something else
he
came
got
out
arrested.
where it was bad news.
Wow, I didn't even think of that, man. Dang. Yeah, that should be more careful. I fell right into it. I fell right into it.
And this is all
Like,
speculation, but you know, I kind of pride myself being a mental health therapist. I can pick up on body language and small cues, and I don't know. It seemed not entirely like it was truthful.
wow, that's wow. I got to look into that. There was one question I wanted to ask you, though. I know we're short on time. Um, like psilocybin or mushrooms. That's something I always wanted to try out. But I kind of have a concern, like I won't, like, quote unquote, come back.
Mhm.
Like I like who I am right now. I like the direction I'm going in, but I do kind of want to see what's inside or what's on the other side without too much affecting what I'm doing right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a common fear. And you know, certainly with all the you know propaganda out there about psychedelics, it's easy. You know, I don't blame you for thinking that way. And in a way, it's partially true, but I don't want to say that to scare you. I want to say that to be encouraging. And you know, it's true that once you take mushrooms, and by the way, mushrooms have been proven to be one of the least toxic substances on the planet. So there's like zero risk of any sort of um, physical harm coming to you, unless it's you know self-imposed. So I always suggest that people do it around people they trust and in a safe environment. Um,
Hmm.
but it's partially true because once you take the mushrooms, you don't come back the same. Once you've seen the unseeable, you can't you can't unknow that. You get to see um, this whole other dimension that always exists around you, but we're sort of blind to because our brain, the way it filters information, it only allows certain frequencies in. and mushrooms will
Mhm.
allow you to see these other dimensions. So you'll take this. Here's an example of how you might change and be different. So you might take some mushrooms, and then you might have a legitimate conversation with a tree, where you feel like it's communicating to you. You're seeing vibrations reverberate off of it and respond to your speech. And then you come out of the
Wow.
trip. You'll come out of the trip and you'll be forever changed, because you'll never doubt that a tree is just a plant. It's just an inanimate object. You'll be forever changed, and you'll think that, holy shit, this is a living thing, and everything around me is living, and it all has ties to consciousness. So, like, in a way, yes, you'll go in and you'll come back different, but it's almost always for the better. If you have a clear life direction that you're set on and you're happy with, if you're genuinely happy with the way your life is going right now, it's not going to like disrupt that. If anything, it's going to enhance the beauty that you already see in your life and motivate
Mm.
you to push further. It will show you different pathways that you can take to find success in whatever you're doing. It can clear up blockages in your mental if you're planning for things. Usually, it's people who are like questioning who they are, who are um, really unhappy at a job and want to change. It's those people who tend to have more of what you would call a bad trip, even though there's no such thing. It's just they'll have a more challenging time in the experience, because it amplifies whatever you go in to the experience with. So if you're loving life and you're loving your direction, it's going to amplify that. If you're hating life and you're hating where you're at, it's going to show you all those things about your life that you hate. And it's going to make you face those so that you can overcome them. It's going to show you pathways out of what you're currently in. And then when you come out of it, it's up to you to put things into action. So it's not like you're gonna go off into psychosis and never come back. You will come back, and you'll come back different. You'll come back better, and hopefully you'll come back with more appreciation for the path that you're set on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I love the way you described that. I'm sold again.
Yeah, and it's not for everybody, but these mushrooms have been with the human species since the beginning of our time. So I have a strong belief that the mushroom itself is sentient. It has an awareness, and it's trying to communicate its message with us. And the way that it does that best is molecularly on a chemical level. You have to ingest the wisdom, and then the molecules of the mushroom interact with your molecules, and it's literally a communication of the divine on the molecular level that you get to experience with your human consciousness. It's really quite cool. And animals do it too. Animals eat psilocybin mushrooms too, and it's a lot of them have the same experiences.
Wow. Wow. Awesome. Yeah, we got to get together sometime so you could help me coordinate that.
Yeah, we'll talk.
When jiu-jitsu again, when the gym's opening up, well, as far for the jiu-jitsu part of it.
Yeah, well, our gym is open right now. You just gotta get a hold of Z, and you gotta sign up for a time slot. We're following all of the Larimer County guidelines. You got to work out with a face mask and keep your social distance. 10 people at a time allowed in the gym, but we're making it work. Making it work. So get back in there.
Yeah. Yeah, eventually, because like it's like playing the guitar or something like that. And once you get to a certain level, you're supposed to come up with your own style and everything. Probably like at brown belt or something like that. And I haven't played the guitar in a while, so I'm probably almost back at a white belt at this point. I do got to get back out there.
Yeah, it'll all come back pretty quick. It'll come back quick. So, well, Tori, I want to say thank you again for joining me on the show today. What an amazing talk, and so enlightening for me. I learned a ton from you, and so interesting how similar a lot of our background is. I think getting to know you better today on the show, and helping the audience get to know you a little bit better, hopefully will tear down some assumptions. And it's an honor and a pleasure to have you as a friend, sir.
Yeah, you too, man. I really appreciate you bringing me on. It was awesome. And yeah, like you said, I got to know you better and looking forward to great times in the future.
Yeah, so if you had anything to leave the audience with, a little piece of Ontario wisdom, this is your piece you can kind of add to the collective puzzle, what would that be? What would you say to the audience?
Jeez, I wasn't ready for that one. I would get right internally. Make sure that that person you see in the mirror is good to go to face the world because there are going to be people hacking at it all day, every day. So you want to fortify yourself as much as possible. Love yourself first before you can learn to love others.
Nice. I like that. All right. So until next time, thanks for listening, and we're out.